Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Score podcast. Today, Aloe and I will be discussing cross-cultural self-care. I feel like we often have a rigid picture of what self-care is and how to specifically practice it. So Aloe and I were talking one day and we thought that it would be interesting to do an episode on how what self-care looks like in our own cultures, how our families practice self-care, because often I think it's really different from how self-care is portrayed in the media, and specifically the American media, obviously. So we're just going to start off today by talking about what's one way we did self-care today. So, Aloe, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Good morning. It's like 8 a.m. Or good afternoon, depends on when you're hearing this. Yeah, like I think like my form of self-care sometimes is like cooking for myself. I don't really do that often. But I'm trying to get better at it because it definitely does make me feel healthier. I think it feels healthier and it just feels like I'm the one, I mean, obviously I'm the one, I'm responsible for my well-being, but usually like my mom cooks or someone else cooks, but this time I was like, like no one was home and I was like, hey, like I should cook for myself. And I think like to me it felt like a form of self-care because it's like I was careful with, like what like the ingredients I was using. Um I was just like more I don't know, more there was more thought put into the food. I mean, not that my mom doesn't put thought into the food she makes, but I don't know. I guess it's like kind of like a gift to myself because it was something that I did for myself. I mean, of course, I mean, not only because I was hungry, right, but because I was trying like this new recipe and I was like, I'm like I wonder how this is gonna turn out. But I guess like just learning to be patient with myself and navigating through that recipe was my form of self-care. Yeah. And you, Daphne, how did you practice like self-care this week?
Yeah, no, I love the way you put that. I think cooking is definitely a great way of doing self-care and trying to like, I don't know. I think it's definitely something that I've been doing a lot more and
Mm-hmm.
feeling a lot better about it because it used to feel more like a chore, in the
Yeah,
midst of
yeah,
such a busy time. But like, I feel like I truly appreciate um like how beneficial like cooking yourself is, like cooking
yeah.
healthy for yourself. So thanks for sharing, Alo. Yeah, and for me, I didn't introduce myself earlier, but I'm Daphne. And I think one way I think yeah, so last week or this Sunday I went hiking again, and I think I stopped hiking in the winter when it was a lot colder. Um, and I was doing it last summer, and I feel like it really rejuvenates me,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I'm hiking in the morning. So I feel like that was a really good way for me to practice self-care this past week. Just being able to be out in nature, breathing fresh air, obviously still social distancing,
Yeah,
um, but getting to be like by yourself in nature, and really like, yeah, refreshing my mind
yeah,
and my body.
yeah.
So,
I love
yeah.
that. I love that.
Mhm.
You just reminded me. I was like, oh my god, yeah. I also went like walking with my mom to the park. Like we usually do that because, like of course it's like a social distancing type of thing. Like you don't need to be around so many people, and you're out in
Mhm.
nature. And there's like this really nice park by where we live, and yeah, we usually just go walking together, and we have all these like just random conversations and now I see that that itself is a form of self-care as well, like bonding
Mm.
with like
Yeah.
someone that's important to you, um especially
Mhm.
like your mom. Like I don't know, I really felt like that was very special and it was a form of self-care. Yeah.
Mm. I agree. Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely a way of self-care that we never really, I don't know, like you never really
Mm-hmm.
categorize it as self-care, but I think that's just because of the way that we talk about self-care, right? And
Yeah.
what's become normalized, and what doesn't seem as normal. But like we said earlier, self-care can really be anything that helps you. So do we want to get into kind of like our main topic? So I know we talked a little about all of we talked a little with our parents and friends kind of looking at what self-care might look like in different cultures. Allie, do you want to start sharing
Yes,
first?
of course. Yeah, when I was talking about this with my mom, I was like, girl, how do you practice self-care? You know, like in Instagram, you see all these like self-care pages and it's all like about slapping on a face mask and getting a
Mm,
pedicure, you know, like getting a manicure. Like
mhm,
that's kind of like the idea of self-care that I had, which was very wrong. And for that reason, I was like, I feel like my mom doesn't practice like self-care, but in reality, she does. It was just me having this
mm,
like limited um I guess meaning to it. So yeah, it was a really special talk, really special conversation that I had with her because
mm,
self-care is kind of to her was kind of like food and cooking. Like, yeah, like when I cook with your aunts, like with her sisters, she's like just like the process of cooking and spending time together, that's my form of self-care because we're creating something as a collective. And although it's
mm,
done as a collective, it is a form of self-care because we're all in a conversation, we're all expressing just different feelings or different opinions about just random topics, and that itself, expressing yourself and creating something is beneficial, and it's important, and it's special. um yeah, so I was really like, that's kind of what inspired me to like start cooking myself, because it's kind of like I'm the one, just creating something valuable and important in that. You learn a lot about yourself, and I can see how like doing it as, as a group with people like you love can really like not only strengthen your relationship with them, but also like the relationship you have with yourself. Really surprising to hear that, because I wouldn't think of self-care kind of like as a collective thing.
mm. Yeah, no, that's so interesting. It really makes me think about how, like, I've been studying cultures in one of my classes, but the idea of like the collectivist culture versus the individualistic culture, at least speaking from my perspective, I know that a lot of East Asian cultures, and my parents are from Taiwan, they are more collectivist, which means that, like, basically what you're describing, they do things more together, like as a collective,
Hmm.
like doing things with like a group goal, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas America is very individualistic, like it's very much about yourself and like, um, like more about like your individual self rather than as the group, as a collective, like when you're doing things and how you think and how you operate. And that actually is so interesting to relate that to self care, because I feel like as you're talking about cooking together and being together and doing something together, I feel like in um, when I go back to Taiwan and visit, I feel like the culture of like eating together is very
Hmm.
different than like in America. I feel like in America, I don't know, maybe it's just my experience, but I feel like in America it's like very intentional, like, or maybe it's also because I'm younger, but like it's very intentional. Like we're gonna go out to eat then, like so that like I don't know, so that we can like hang out and catch up, but it's a little more formal. Like it's something that puts
Hmm.
you at ease. It's not something that you have to get ready for, you know?
Hmm.
And then just being at the dinner table and catching up with friends and family just feels more like a form of relaxation and self-care rather than something that you have to like dress up and go to and like be intentional about, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's really interesting to see self-care and how that reflects differently in cultures because of like the cultural differences, right?
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
characteristics of different cultures. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think um, going off of that, the conversations that I've had, I was talking to my friends who identify as Vietnamese American. The first thing we started discussing was also religion, because in their area, a lot of their friend groups who are also Vietnamese American are all Buddhist, and they um, I think that's also comes as a form of self-care for them,
Hmm.
like going to the temple or the monastery, spending time, um, just practicing their religion, often calms them and helps them. But also from an Asian American perspective, um, seeing that like a unique form of self-care, I would say a unique form of self-care is like actually taking our parents out to spend time with them, because I feel like that's something that is not as often done because of like
Mhm.
the Asian American culture or the Asian culture, to like bond with your parents in that way. But the three of us were discussing, and like we realized that it's definitely more as we grow up and like we want to learn more about our history and our culture, after, like, because we grew up in America, we didn't grow up in our parents' countries, but getting to spend time talking to them and just catching up with them in a way that we don't typically do could also be a form of self-care.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely. I totally see that. I
Mhm.
think it was really interesting when you mentioned how like um just like the aspect of religion is self-care. Um and spending time with God, and it just made me think about, well, my mom did mention this, how like to her praying together as a family was a form of self-care, because it's like, because of course you're praying together, but at the same time you're investing in your spirituality. um
Mm.
and that's special. That's, my mom always stays hearing like all these priests on YouTube. And I think that's, it's kind of like us hearing podcasts, or us hearing just different, like motivation videos on YouTube.
Mhm.
That's what it is to her. So I don't know, I thought that was really, really interesting
Mm.
how religion, helps. And I don't know, like religion and spirituality
Mhm.
helps her feel better. And that's what she mentioned, that that was her form of self.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. I think it's sometimes like it's sometimes taken out of the conversation because not everyone practices it, but
Hmm.
definitely like as I'm thinking about it, like practicing being a Christian and like reading the Bible in the morning or spending time in prayer with God, for me is definitely a form of self-care that I sometimes like forget to practice.
Yeah.
Um, but it's definitely like really, it's true. It is a form of self-care. And like when you're talking about like just not know, like kind of going back to what you were talking about earlier, that like you didn't really think your mom practiced self-care. I like same. Honestly, like I was like, we have these conversations about self-care all the time, and we're like, we do this and this. I'm like, my parents don't do that. So I don't
Yeah.
know what self-care looks like for them. But
Yeah.
honestly, like thinking about it, it's like, yeah, like my parents really like gardening. My mom more than my dad. My dad
Hmm.
goes with it. But like gardening is a form of self-care to them. They can spend hours just in the backyard or in our community garden, just like, I don't know, redoing the soil or
Yeah.
just planting seeds or harvesting. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, yeah, that's ages. Yeah, my mom as well. She really loves gardening. Like she has a
Mhm.
really nice garden. It's really small because her husband we don't have a big backyard, but it's really small. But she takes care of it. Like every day she goes waters the plants. After coming
Mm.
back from the park. Um, and yeah, she like invests a lot of energy into it, and I was like, I'm like, oh, and like that's really nice. She has a cute garden. She's taking care of it. But I was like,
Mhm.
I kind of failed to realize that that was her form of, not only relaxing, but of her form of self care, as
Mhm.
well. So I was like, well, like that's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's funny because I think, like, for me, I'm, like, always there, but I don't want to do it yet. I'm like, will I be a fan of gardening when I'm older, though? I feel like my parents and all their friends are always talking about gardening. I'm like, I'm not interested in gardening yet, but maybe when I'm older, for some reason, I feel like people have an affinity to garden and grow their own food. You're eating healthier because you're growing your own food and stuff. So maybe I'll get more into gardening as a form of self-care too.
No, yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, it's also because I don't know, just you would think that because of COVID we would have more time to like do all these things that we wouldn't be able to do if we weren't home, like if we were on the college campus. Also, like, I don't know, I'd be so stressed, like, because in my house I do homework, in my house I work because I work online as well. And in my house I go to class, and it's just, it's I get too caught up in that routine. that is sometimes difficult to just like, just sometimes like go outside, just take some fresh air, spend some time in the garden. Um, but yeah, definitely, I feel like I have to just try my best, investing more time. Just going out to the garden, and even if I don't like completely like enjoy it all the time, I think it is something that is really helpful. And yeah, like I don't want to wait till I'm old to like work on a garden, because I don't know, like I have my mom right now, and I'm like, man, like I should spend more time with her, like in the garden, because I want to be part of um her self care experience too,
Mm.
and I want to learn more from that. I want to learn more from how she perceives self care. I think that'll be just really special.
Mm.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that just really beautiful to hear how different self care looks like in every family. I think it's definitely something that we sometimes overlook, because it doesn't look like the traditional form of self care that we hear about now. But I just really hope that this conversation has sparked some curiosity about what self care looks like in your culture. And yeah, it would be really nice if you shared um your forms of self care, like your culture's forms of self care. Yeah, and thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that you have a great day and that you make the most out of it. Yeah. Bye.
Bye.